And actually, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because I know me.
And you don't have to understand my boundaries to respect them.
Well, no, I'm the president and co-founder of McShin, a person in long-term recovery from substance use disorder.
Oh, goodness.
Like, okay, I gotta work on that. Like,
Celebrating my 6 months. Didn't have cake.
Yeah.
gosh, you scared me.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the award-winning recovery podcast, Get in the Herd. I am your host, Nathan Mitchell, and today we are in the herd with Leslie Ann Wertz. And Leslie, I have known you for probably 2.5, maybe 3 years at this point. Maybe 2.5 years at this point, and I know very little about you. So I'm so glad, because I think we've only met in person twice, once in Vegas and then once a couple months ago in Northern Virginia. And yet you have such a presence in the Commonwealth, and I barely know you. So I'm so excited to talk to you today and to hear what's going on in your world, because everything seems to be like, wow, this is cool stuff. So Leslie, welcome to the show. How are you feeling? A little nervous?
Just a little nervous. Thank you for allowing me to, share that and get that out the way. So
Boom.
I'm a little nervous.
Well, I appreciate it. I went and got some water before you as well, so my throat's starting to get a little, So we'll keep it going and we'll talk. So Leslie, you are a woman in recovery, is that correct?
That's true. Yes, sir.
All right, and so tell us, tell us, if you don't mind, a little bit about your story, man. Where are you coming from? I said, "Man," excuse me. Not. Oh yeah. Art, I'm already tripping right out the gate, bro.
Checks out.
Checks out. Tell us a little bit about your journey. What brought you into? Well, let me tell this first. So you're a certified peer recovery specialist. You have a recovery community organization, which I just found out today has been around for 2 years. I thought it was brand new, but it's still relatively new. You've just released a book about trauma and your own recovery journey. So tell me, how did you get to this point? And I haven't read your book yet.
Well, that's okay. It still is a new book, and there's plenty of time for you to get yourself a copy. And so thank you for having me on the show, Nathan. And what can I say about my journey? It's been an interesting one. And I currently have a little over, well, I like to say 22 plus years recovery. I like that number. It's closer to 24 years.
Wait. You just celebrated a birthday last week, and I thought you turned 24.
Wow, do the math. And so, 22 plus years recovery is how I like to describe it, from a variety of substances, substance misuse. I am originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I relocated to the Northern Virginia area in 1999 because I knew that I had to do something to change my life. In 1999, I had 3 children under my care that I loved dearly. But I had this issue with the substance use that was just putting me, putting them, putting my dreams and aspirations at risk. I come from a family who suffers with substance use disorder. And I do believe that it was a part of my purpose, which was to kind of change the trajectory for future generations in my family and do away with the addiction, the hopelessness, and poverty. And so in 1999, when I realized that I was not on path, I decided that I needed to do something different.
Good for
And I
you.
relocated.
That's beautiful. I didn't realize you were from Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of strong ties from South Jersey, but my mother's family is all Philly. We're South Jersey. They went out of Philly, but my grandfather went to college in I guess, what was it then, the Philadelphia pharmacology school or something. He became a pharmacist in Philadelphia and worked there
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. Yeah. What Why did you choose Richmond? I'm
Um,
sorry. Why did you choose Virginia? You're not in Richmond.
Northern
You're in Northern
Virginia,
Virginia. Sorry.
exactly. So I do have some family ties. My ex, his family is from Virginia. Well,
Okay.
they were living in Virginia and they're still living in Virginia. And so, yeah, they encouraged me. They saw, the downward spiral that my family was in and encouraged me to move. And it took me a long time to make that decision, but it was one of the best decisions that I ever made.
And you said you had the children with you too. How are the children? How are your children now?
Oh, they're great. They're great. I have, they're all adults now, right? 1999, that's been, over 20 years. Yeah. And so I have a chef in the family. I have a registered nurse in the family. I have someone in security in my family, and I have someone with aspirations to get into cosmetology. And this is so great because my vision for my center is to be able to provide a variety of services to people seeking recovery. And if I can get all of that under one roof, it's going to make barriers that much more easier to overcome.
Well, let's talk about your center. So, where is your center? What's it called? I'll find the link and I'll send the link over to Art. What's it called?
Sure. So it's called the Victory Peer Recovery Services. It's located in Herndon, Virginia. And currently, most of our services, all of our services are virtual, still very new, and looking to continue to form partnerships and funding for to possibly find a brick and mortar position to position ourselves as a brick and mortar place. But we find that the services that we provide virtually is meeting quite a significant need here in Northern Virginia.
Well, so what brought you to the place of creating this? Just I guess 2 years ago.
Hmm.
What started you on that path to creating a recovery community organization?
Sure. So let's see. When I left Philadelphia in '99, I already had 2 years of social work under my belt. I mean, I was a mom and a student in the day, and I was an addict at night.
Wow.
And had 2 years of social work under my belt. So I knew that my purpose was to serve disadvantaged and at risk communities who might be coping with the same situations and generational circumstances as I myself found myself in. And so I relocated here, cleaned myself up, and looked for work. Look for work, and grab jobs here and there and continue to try to find someone to employ me for them as a social worker. And that didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And so I said, well, if you don't get an invitation to the table, or if you're not gaining access to the table, you have to build your own table. And so that's what I did. I created the Victory Peer Recovery Services so that I could fulfill my life purpose of serving disadvantaged communities and populations.
That's awesome. Art is scrolling a link to your site right now, and I'm
Hmm.
just looking at this for the first time myself. The victoryprs.org. If you want to check it out. So you were a social worker, or
I am a social
you
worker.
are a social
Hmm.
worker. There we go. Thank you.
Hmm.
And I love because I was at the Virginia Summer Institute of Addiction Sciences conference in July. And what I loved, because it was my first time at that conference, and what I loved about the conference was that there was an emphasis on peers, which I guess is kind of newish for that. And it's a lot of counselors and a lot of clinicians who aren't necessarily people with lived experience with addiction. And so I did tend to go to all the groups that were PRS focused. So maybe that's why my mind is saying, oh, there was so much PRS stuff. But the one of the big sessions that was talked about was a discussion that was had in one of the bigger sessions was the different roles between the counselor, the therapist, and the peer. And it was neat because it was sort of broke these three buckets down, and this is what happens generally in this situation, and how the person who's working with the person in crisis should be working with them. And a lot of that, what was interesting to me is I noticed something, and I actually brought it up, is that when we're looking at that, a counselor and a therapist wouldn't necessarily work with an individual with the idea of trying to get that person to become another therapist or another counselor. It's not really how that works. But as I think you'll agree, I'm a PRS. I'm not yet certified. I'm certifiable, but not certified. But I'm also a PRS. You're a certified PRS. There is sort of an ingrained, or at least to me, it seems like as we become peers, we work with other people and try to help identify those people who would become great peers moving forward to help build the peer workforce. Would you agree with that?
I certainly do. I certainly do. In fact, I mean, I feel ever since I became familiar with the peer profession in 2020, I had never even heard of it. And so there was an instant connection, and I found it to be such a perfect fit because as a peer recovery specialist, using or sharing your lived experience is encouraged. That's not the case in the counseling, psychiatry, and therapist profession. And so, in my recovery, there was very little therapy involved because I was afraid that no one would be able to relate to my experience. Now, that might not be the case today, but when I was looking for the help that I was looking for and the folks that I saw sitting behind the glass window, I'm like, what is she going to tell me? And I've had a few discussions. I've been on that side of the desk. And so I agree that not only does the peer profession offer those suffering with the addiction a unique perspective as it relates to offering that hope and that encouragement, but it also allows people to see that they can actually make something good out of all the things that they've been through. There's something good that can come out of that trauma and those mistakes and that jail time or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, whether it's the physical jails or the mental jails. I agree. And I'm looking at your site here, and I'm looking at the 8 dimensions of wellness, and I do want to talk a little bit more about the online work that you do. Oh, I see the Recovery Advocacy Project is there.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Well, let's talk about that actually, because I want to make sure we save some time to. Well, I definitely want to talk about your book, but let's talk really briefly about Mobilize Recovery and the Virginia Recovery Advocacy Project. Get that nonsense out of the way. No, it's definitely not nonsense. Let's get this piece, because I know that the book I'm really eager to talk about. I'm actually eager to read it too. I only just found the link earlier today, so my bad on that. But let's talk about Mobilize. You've attended in person. You're going to attend, I guess, this year as well, online with all the virtual programs. Did you attend the very first one?
I did not. So I missed 2019, but 2020, 2021, 2022, this will be my third year. And so 2019, does that even count?
No. Well, I think you already know this, but in 2020, I had already booked the hotel in Las Vegas before it had gone virtual. So I ended up doing the virtual conference in the hotel where it was supposed to be live from the hotel room, which was nice. By the way, Art, they had a long desk that fit the whole length of the wall.
I knew it was coming in.
You talked about building tables earlier, Leslie, and my little brain popped up because I've been literally trying to build a table all day, and yesterday and the day before. But on that note, I'm sorry, ADD. That's actually what I wanted to mention to you. So you talked about the lived experience and the difference between. That's why I brought up the book. Okay, so you were talking about clinicians and lived experience, and one of the things that I found in with my journey of self. I won't say my recovery journey because I wasn't recovery focused, and I didn't even really know what that meant. But years ago, I I got stuck. I got fired from a job. And I got fired from a job because of a substance use disorder issue, because of a
Mm.
substance misuse. It really doesn't matter what happened, but I had gotten let go from this job. I broke down and I became really stuck in myself. And this is 2007, 6, 7, 7, 2007. And I became really stuck for months. Actually, lasted years. And I went deeper and deeper and deeper in, and I can identify some of the things that I got stuck on. Now I can see. But one thing during that period, I had some very well-meaning friends. Of course, I didn't have insurance or any of that because barely had that job, and I think I was making unemployment, which was who knows, and I was spending my unemployment on drugs afterwards anyway. So drugs and alcohol, mooching off of people, and I didn't pay rent for I think 18 months. I don't know how I didn't
Mm.
get kicked out during that time. Um, but one of the things a well-meaning friend of mine did was to say he would pay for me to go to a psychiatrist. And I said, all right, well, I'll do that. And this is in DC and fancy, and it was, I think it was like $250 an hour or whatever it was, ridiculous amount of money. And right off the bat, I've always, oddly enough, I've said, I have an aversion to taking any medications. Period. I don't want drugs in my body except for the ones that I can get illegally on the corner. Um, And okay, and I think within a week he was offering me beta blockers, which was really really. I used to do a lot of theater work. I used to be on stage a lot, and so I hadn't expressed any issues with stage fright, and yet here he is pushing. I'm like, I'm okay. There's something nice about having that a little bit of adrenaline rush before you go on stage or in front of people. That helps me. I understand for other people, but me. And I that was where I started to lose trust with this guy,
Mm.
this doctor. And within a few weeks, he had identified and diagnosed me as ADD, which I didn't know what that was at the time, and certainly it makes sense. But when he did that, he talked to me about Adderall, and that wasn't something I knew about. I didn't really know anything. I didn't even know the questions to ask. I certainly didn't know it was addictive. And mind you, when Leslie, when I went to this doctor, I had talked about my drug use with him. And
Mm.
I'm an uppers person, so my cocaine and my amphetamines use, my meth use. And so when I'm talking about this, I'm surprised he didn't have any little light bulbs going off, because here he is a few weeks later offering me Adderall, which again I didn't know what it was. And I said, well, I don't really want something that's going to change my wiring, but I'm willing to try it, and let's do it for a week. And Leslie, I'll tell you what, Adderall became fun, of course,
Mm.
and I didn't start. I mean, it definitely clicked into my addiction at the time, but I went through the 1 week prescription. I went through most of it in that day, that night, most of it, and I didn't renew the prescription after that. It wasn't until years and years and years later that I went back to Adderall, when it was readily available at the time, because my addiction had gotten deeper. But the point is that without meeting somebody with lived experience, without somebody who kind of had been in my shoes, here is this man, this doctor, I won't say man, this doctor, this person, making decisions for me that are completely wrong for me. And without that benefit of experience, it's clinically, I want to say crazy, but it's absurd that this person can be paid such an obscene amount of money to make decisions that are terrible, terrible, terrible for me. I'm getting to the point. The point being, we need to have that peer force. If I had met with a peer, there are these moments in my life that, now that I'm can, sit back with time and experience, and I can look back and I'm thinking, gosh, if John Shinholzer had been right there at that moment, and had been able to say what I know he says, John, Jesse, any of the people we all know, in recovery, the peers, gosh, I wonder what my life could have been different, how that could have been differently. I'm not dwelling on the past. It's just
Right.
more of a looking at the gaps, right? I think about pretrial for me, where I would walk into pretrial and I'd, walk in and piss clean, because I had white knuckled it for a few days, and then I'd be getting high in the parking lot. That's my story. And then come in towards the end of my pretrial and look at this lady after coming in for months and dressing up and
Mhm.
clean cut and looking at this lady and saying, is this really what we're doing? We're making felons out of all of us, addicts. And she just looked at me and without any irony, and she said, "But Nathan, look at how well you're doing." And in my head, I'm screaming, "Lady, I've lost 35 pounds in 4 months in front of you. I don't have a job. I'm going to get high in the parking lot when I leave. How do you not see that?" And I didn't see her again until I went to trial because after that I absconded. So, it's absurd to me that we continue to put these non-peer people into place, or these non-peer people who don't have any experience with addiction or very little experience with addiction to make really really important decisions. I'm thinking of you judges and POs and officers and attorneys. So what do you think, because now we've got peers, peers popping up everywhere. What do you think about the movement of the peer recovery specialist profession? Right now here in Virginia, what do you think about? Are we doing a good job? Do we need to do better? How can we do better?
They're making a big difference. And you're right. I mean, not only does the peer recovery specialist bring the lived experience, but they can also, help other professions, approach these situations from a trauma informed perspective. And so that way you're more likely to offer rehabilitation to folks suffering with substance use disorder, as opposed to punitive damages or punitive remedies for that person. And so, yeah, we're making a big difference. There are organizations, the Chris Atwood Foundation, for example. If I'm not mistaken, they've gone into some of the different police departments and done some training with first responders who go out. And they also have their mobile unit, which, if I'm depending on the night of the week, they will actually go and go on site at some of the calls out to folks who seem to be under distress based on substance use or mental health. And so there's been a big difference, and we've got a lot of organizations coming together to make sure that those first responders and other folks who are connecting with people in need are responding appropriately.
That's awesome, and I didn't realize that about Ginny and the Chris Atwood Foundation up
Mm-hmm.
there. I'm actually getting total tangent over here for a second, but you know that I'm getting ready to switch jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and I will if Art lets me, I'll continue to host occasionally, if not every. I'm trying to do every Thursday still once we get. But one of the things I'm really really excited to do, because I'll be working with Jenny and the Chris Atwood Foundation. I'll be working with 11 different organizations throughout the Commonwealth to build out AmeriCorps positions, which are specifically called Recovery Corps positions. So there are 40 different Recovery Corps positions coming to Virginia that are going to be spread across 11 sites in the first year. And this is really really cool from a personal standpoint. I get to see what all these other organizations are doing and how they do it, and because there's a lot of really great stuff happening in Virginia. And we see now we have this big giant block of funding that's coming from the federal side and from VAR, which is putting in half the money towards Recovery Corps, and we see what's going to happen with that. Really really exciting things. And what I love is that it positions the peer recovery specialist workforce that's going to be built from this to really launch next year, when next year becomes the year of the peer. I don't know that DBHDS has said that. I have only heard that in a classroom somewhere, but apparently next year, regardless of whether it's an actual thing or not, I think 2023 should be the year of the peer,
Yeah,
because
the
certainly,
peer. I like
yeah,
it.
I do too. I think it's every year is the year of the peer, but it's certainly become a really big push. That I've seen in my 4.5 years in this space, which is not a long time. And I'm seeing such a dramatic change. And I think that these gap filling these gap fillers is what I'll call us. I see, I don't think of that as a derogatory term. I hope it doesn't come off that way, but I see peer recovery specialists as the gap fillers. And you talked about going in and training and working with the police officers, and I think of my friend my friend out in um, my friend out in Chesterfield who's doing ride. I don't know if he's doing ride-alongs with the paramedics, but he's doing follow-ups
Mhm.
after overdose calls. And he's a peer and he goes and does that. I'm thinking of Project Recovery, which I think is doing the ride-alongs here in Richmond. Well, I'm in Henrico, but in Richmond City, and I think in Henrico they're coming too. I know there's a lot of push for that here in Virginia. And I think it's a fantastic way to go. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that peers can fill the gaps where we just can't put anybody in. But how do we continue to demonstrate our value as a workforce, as a peer recovery workforce? How do we do that?
That's a good question.
Or do
I
we just
think
say to hell with it and just do our thing?
the main thing is to grow it, to grow the workforce, and to have our presence, to grow the workforce and be more present in the community, and make sure with the larger workforce making a larger difference in the community, and lowering some of the rising numbers of substance use, misuse, overdose, and even suicide. Then that's going to increase our value.
Yeah. I'm eager to see, and maybe you have some ideas on this, and maybe not, but I know that the new 988 line has come out, and I know it's had some controversy to it. I'm not quite sure. I'm not really real well read on the controversy. I do know that it's a step in I think, maybe you know better, but I think it's a step in the right direction for individuals who are in crisis to find help they need. I know it's geared towards mental health and suicide, um, and substance use is really just slow suicide in Nathan's opinion. So, any thoughts on that? Or
You know, I'm like you. I'm at a small disadvantage because, but for my involvement with Recovery Advocacy Project, Mobilize Recovery, um, my involvement and my ability to involved real time in grassroots efforts in the community with what's going on is kind of secondhand for me, because I'm kind of focused on what pays the bills, and so I'm not as well versed on 988 either. But anything that provides people who are in crisis a way to get their needs met, and a way to do that more quickly as these needs continue to escalate, I think it's a move in the right direction.
yeah, and yeah, we can just leave it at that. I'm glad you brought back Mobilize and Virginia Rap, because we started talking about that and I went backwards to talk about more peer stuff, and it's become my passion, obviously over the last few years, that I keep going back to talk about peers and peers doing the recovery work. But talking about the Recovery Advocacy Project and Virginia specifically, talking about Mobilize Recovery, what accomplishments or what failures or what is your involvement, and what do you want to see get done? What brings you to the table?
I like the ability to to sit at the table with people coming, from not only a variety of backgrounds, but from all around the country. And so we
Mm.
get a chance to hear what they're doing, what's working, what's not working, changes that they make to increase, results and positive outcomes. And so it's just always nice to be involved with a variety of ways of meet this growing and ever changing epidemic. I mean, it's changing, and there are a lot of different things involved with, why people might be in crisis. And so continuing to be involved with lots of different programs and methods of addressing the community is helpful.
I'm with you on that. I especially Mobilize and the National Virginia excuse me, the National Recovery Advocacy Project. The ability to meet so many people in this space who are doing such incredible work, um, and to learn and grow, and to see what challenges are similar and what challenges are different. From Maine's got a very robust advocacy group up there. Our friends in New Jersey, our friends obviously in Vegas. We're meeting new friends in other states, and I'm with you on that too, to see what the challenges are around the country and how other people are facing and meeting those challenges. I think we've done a lot of great work here in Virginia. I know that we still have more to go. I think sometimes we see big, giant problems and don't quite know what to do with them. I think that's a thing that I do all the time in my life. Um, but I love that we have a team that gets together and is very passionate, and very, loving and accepting of each other.
And we've grown a lot. We've
Mm.
grown so much over the last 2 years, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, because when it started here in Virginia with what you and Katrina.
Northern Virginia, that's right. Me and Katrina, and then there's Joseph
And
as
Joseph,
well.
yeah,
Hmm.
and yeah, I haven't seen Katrina in a minute. I talked to her. That's an aside, but it's great to see more and more people getting.
Katrina is on the ground 24/7. She is actually doing the work. And so I just admire everything that she does to help Northern Virginia residents. She does a
Yeah,
phenomenal job. She really does.
yeah, a lot of Katrina love there too. She's to know Katrina is to know why peer recovery. Why it's important that peers in recovery are doing the work they do. She is nonstop. Um,
And
one
to
thing.
that end, I wanted to just also interject here. We need to also focus on, peer support for peer recovery specialists because, and I think this is in line with growing the workforce because it's a humongous situation that we're dealing with, and we know that many hands make light the work. And so the more people that we can get involved at any level, be it, at the grassroots organizing level, or even if it's just, contacting different county members in support of recovery initiatives in Virginia, this is going to be helpful because, burnout is an issue. And, we need to keep our cups filled so that we can pour into others. And so that's something else that we need to focus on, relief for the
Yeah.
workforce.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Leslie. And I'm in a group. I'm in a 10-month long um, recovery. It's called, I think, what is it, DBHDS and VCU, and this might be something you'd be interested in for next year. They do a Recovery Leadership Academy, and most of the individuals are, well, I think everybody's a peer. Most are PRSs or CPRSs. Um, Looking for solutions. It's really been amazing, the connections and everything. But our little I guess there are 23 of us, 22 of us total in the whole group, and within that we break down into smaller groups to work on one project for the end of the session. So we're coming to a close. We finish up the last day of October and the first day of November. The work that our capstone project group is working on is a mentorship program. Now we have a very specific time frame that we're looking at. We're looking at the time frame between taking the class and getting to the certification. Um, but I think in general, I know that here in region, I think we're in region 4. we have the coordinators, at the DBHDS who are working on bigger, broader mentorship programs for the PRSs that work within our region here, within our deep, our health region. And I'm impressed with the work. I mean, maybe Bentley Wood, and what is her name? COVID brain fog is a real thing, Leslie. I just had COVID 3 weeks ago, and the brain fog is still killing me sometimes. But anyway, I digress. Uh, there's work on that,
It'll
and
get
I think
better.
that what's that? You
It'll
there?
get better.
It'll get better. Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it's just nice to sit back and fog out. Um, but you're absolutely right, though. The burnout is a thing. That work is nonstop. Um, I think mentorship programs. I think, building that robust support network, within ourselves, within our own ranks, and then making sure that sort of not trade organization, but some kind of. I know there's a PRS, space on Facebook for Virginia PRSs, but some sort of maybe a little more organized group of people who can go to each other, who aren't going to feel who aren't going to feel like there might be repercussions if they were to talk to their fellow colleagues where they work, or their boss, because rippling effects. I mean, I've been very, very fortunate in my role here at McShin that I can come and talk to my bosses very, very openly. But I know that's not the case for other people who work as PRSs in other industries. Those maybe who don't answer back to another peer, who might might answer to a clinician or somebody else who just doesn't have that perspective. Anyway, I'm agreeing with you, and I don't really have much to say on that. So sorry. Talking about Mobilize, talking about Virginia Rap, that's all well and good, but I am really keen to talk about your book and the title on that book, because I realized, what, June 16th you launched that?
June 16th on Amazon, July 7th on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of different stages there. I mean, I kind of talked about it in the introduction, where it was like an assignment. It was something that I just had to do, because as I talk about, recovery is possible, and one day at a time, the question for a lot of people is how, Leslie,
Mm-hmm.
how do you do it? And I was like, okay, if you want to know how I did it, I had to put it in a book, because there are some people who know my story. There are some people who don't know my story. And I don't want it,
There's your book.
thank you. I saw that. It kind of scared me a little bit. Yes. And I
Well,
want to be,
wait. Let me say the name for those who aren't watching the screen, who might just be listening. Leslie's book is Trauma: Transformation Testimony, a Recovery Memoir. This is your story.
my story.
Yeah.
My story. Um, One of the things that I think I want to focus on now that I've gotten the book behind me, because like all of the projects were on hold. It was like, you've got to get this done. And now that this is behind me and I have met this goal, um, one of the purposes of this book is to really talk about the connection between adverse childhood experiences and dysfunctional behaviors in adulthood, and other things that encroach upon your wellness and your well-being and your ability to um, fulfill your purpose in life. And it kind of disheartens me to see people suffering unnecessarily. And I know that we have to meet people where they are, and I know that people need to be, um, how do I put this? People need to be ready. I know I needed to be ready. I want to bounce back just really quickly to when you were talking about meeting with the physician, and I said that I didn't do a whole lot of therapy, because the only time I met with a physician was to get medication. I mean, it was when I decided that I wanted to get myself together, I went inward to do that. But not sure why I went there, but the point I really wanted to make was that I wanted to be able to get in writing for anybody
Yeah.
who has the question, how to what is one of the what's a successful way. There are many successful pathways to recovery. This memoir talks about what was successful for me.
Hmm. Well, that's the thing about it that I've learned in my short little time on this earth is that the things that might work for me are not necessarily the things that'll work for you, and may not work for Art. And the things that work for Art or might work for you, Leslie, may not work for me. Um, when I share and I have the opportunity to do groups here, and I love doing groups here. I love doing groups anywhere. I've it becomes my therapy in a way. Because usually what I'll do is I'll just open up with whatever asinine, sometimes a big problem, but usually whatever asinine little things that are going and annoying in my life, and I'll start with that, and I'll launch into how do I get out of this, and I sort of bring the everyday problems that I have, to the group, or I let them bring theirs too. But often it's easier to start off with this is what happened, and this is what I did, and boy, do I wish I hadn't done it that way. I wish I had done something else. What do you think would have worked better in this situation? And because I'm still ruled by my emotions sometimes, too much, and that emotional stability, that emotional handle of my emotions is still pretty fresh. I'm still learning about that. Anger is a big part of my story, and it comes out um, mostly in inside ways. It always did in the past. When I was younger, it became a very interior thing to just take that anger and just cram it down until it exploded every once in a while. And in recovery, what I've found is that I'm not cramming it down as much. It just means that I'm popping off a little bit here and a little bit here and a little bit here. So often I get to go back and in the language of 12 steps, I get to go back and do a 10th step pretty quickly. And I bring that to the table with groups because that's the only way that I know how to do what I'm doing now. And what is the quote? Do uh, do what works until you know better. I'm totally misquoting that.
Do what works.
Oh, I think it's do what works until you know better,
Is that a
and then
quote?
do that, and then do that. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's something attributed to Maya Angelou. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better.
Do that. Oh,
Yeah, or
okay.
do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so and
But you know what? You make a really, really good point, and it just, um, reiterates the ongoing nature of recovery. That's what's so fun about, like, when I do my virtual groups too. It's always about, okay, what real kind of stuff do we have going on? And everybody gets to talk about, successfully engaging wellness and recovery tools to overcome situations because it never really goes away. It's like, Leslie, you feel good, celebrate. Why don't you go have a drink? You're feeling really good, right, Leslie? Why don't you just go have a drink then?
yeah.
No, I don't want to have a drink today. Every day, I don't want to have a drink today.
Hmm. It's tough, and it comes up. I guess what recovery is teaching me is not so much to be afraid or that's ever going to go away. It's just here's a few tools that have worked for other people and might work for you. I'm getting bigger at laughing at it. I'm about to change jobs, and anytime there's a change in my life, and this is the first job change I've had in recovery. And my brain is telling me all kinds of things. You can go out and get drunk. Yeah, I mean, we went to Taco Tuesday last week, and I'm like, margaritas would be great right now. And I put on weight since I've been in recovery, and right now there's a part of my brain that's like, you know what? Couple of weeks with I know how to get this weight off quick. They can
Oh,
cheat. Oh, but
but
Leslie,
it never goes away.
yeah,
And
it
see, and
doesn't.
that's what's so great about being around peers because we understand that. We
Right.
understand that, successful recovery is to be celebrated, to be encouraged, and everything else.
Yeah. And so you wrote a whole book about your recovery and your experience and trauma and I am gonna order it as soon as we get done here. I'm gonna order it. I'm gonna read it. Um,
Because I wanted to also, also one of the things that another reason why I wrote this book is for people, because I have a background in social work and a little bit of background in psychology. When you understand how the mind works, how the brain works, how what we do is based on how we think, then you can make better choices. And for people who haven't had the ability to get inside a classroom to kind of understand that they can change the way that they feel about themselves, and they can change the way that they feel about themselves, and they can even change the way that the things that they do, if they just understand why they do. If people had a better understanding how trauma relates to some of the things that we do in adulthood, and once we know better, we do better.
those connections. Recovery is teaching me and has taught me so much about why I do what I do and the things that I didn't really think all that much of and actually how they have affected me and kept me down, mentally, and physically, in my brain and I can relate to that. I can certainly relate to that. You have such a big, beautiful, broad heart, and I'm so glad that we've had this time to talk. What else do you want to tell everybody? We're at the 47-minute mark here, Leslie. We can keep going if you want, but you know,
um, so yeah, I've got to go back to this connection between trauma and addiction.
yeah,
I didn't know that I had PTSD. I didn't know that you could get PTSD from childhood sexual abuse. And maybe people don't know that you can suffer PTSD from things that happen to you in your household. You don't necessarily have to go to war. You don't have to be a veteran or a soldier to suffer some major PTSD stuff that affects the way you act and the way you behave. And so that's the passion behind this book, to help people, to help people understand a little better about a path to recovery. Um, yeah, yeah.
yeah. How was, if I can follow up on this, um, the experience of writing this book? How was that?
Oh my goodness.
How was that in terms of your recovery and your family, all of the things?
I mean, it was a goal. It was like an assignment. It's like not only has everything that I cope with and experience meant to serve me in the peer profession, but it was also meant, to serve my purpose overall. I guess that's one and the same. And so it's something that I just had to do. I kept at it.
How long did it take you?
Wow. I started in 2017.
Yeah. Yeah.
I started in 2017. Yeah. It was,
You know,
I
we
mean, yeah, I saw other people doing it, and I was like, you know what, you can do it. And with Kindle Direct Publishing, I mean, I encourage people, anybody who ever has the dream of becoming a published author, do it,
yeah.
do it.
One of the I have more follow-up questions. One of the hurdles for me in setting my own story down. Well, there's two big hurdles, but one major obstacle that is I don't want to write I don't want to write a story. I don't want my mother to read my story. I don't. And because I love her I love her, and I don't want her to read that. Um and so I struggle with that. Which I think yes, okay, for writing a book that's a little bit more esoteric, but in my life, I think there's a part of me that still, I am one of those people who, when the addiction kicked in a we're going far out, we're going to destroy everything mode, my family went that way, and I left them over there, and I went that way. And I did plenty of self-destructive, and I did take advantage of them in times, but I also really separated myself and isolated myself from them in and I don't know. How did you get to that point? Um to
You
do
know,
that?
you make some really good points, and I understand that hesitancy.
Mm,
I did not get dirty in this book.
mm.
I mean, with my addiction and coming in Philadelphia, I spent a lot of time in Kensington area of Philadelphia, and that's the heroin capital of the country, I think, definitely of the East Coast. And so, I mean, people come from all over
Yeah.
to cop in Kensington, and they never leave. And so I'm so grateful that I survived that. But the point I want to make is I didn't get too dirty. And I wasn't sure. I thought you were going to say that your hesitancy was born of perfectionism. So I didn't let that stop me.
Yeah, there's
And
that too.
I didn't let, what happened stop me. I found a way to, I guess for you, Nathan, I guess my suggestion would be is to figure out what the purpose and the message you're trying to send, and then share only a part of the story that conveys that message. And you don't have to do anything that's going to open up any wounds or cause any undue harm to your family.
I I I think what I'm hearing from you too, said or unsaid, is there's the when you say, what's the purpose of writing this? And I think there's still a lot of work that I need to do to get through some trauma that's been holding me back. I know there is. And before I can, well, if I were to start doing this, because I would like to write, I would like to, I do tell my story all the time. I tell pieces of my story, all the time. Select quotes from Nathan. There we go. Book title for Nathan. Select quotes from Nathan. It's a one a day book. Um, Before I do that, I think I need to be in a one with my trauma, and one with my forgiveness. And so maybe you've experienced, and maybe you were, I mean, you just did this, so you were pretty deep into recovery. My boss, as you know, Honesty Liller, she just wrote her book, and I don't know if you've read it, but I went and read that, and I thought, wow, that's really honest. And I know most of the stories in there. I knew a lot of that. And I don't think anything less of her. I mean, it's amazing to read these stories and to know the woman she is, the person she is. And I look at that and think, wow, wow. I don't know that I can do that. And that's yeah. So that's part of that, and the other part. I mean, yes, perfectionism is definitely part of that. Um, there was something else that
You could write about that.
the perfectionism.
You could write about, what's holding you back from writing your story.
Yeah.
And then perhaps in the middle of writing that, it changes, and then that becomes the ending of your story. The point
Ooh,
is, the point is you start writing.
that's meta. I like it. Yeah. It's so important that we tell our stories.
Yeah.
It is so important that we tell our stories. Leslie, do you have anything else you want to say before we close this out?
No, I just thank you so much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about, peer recovery in Northern Virginia, talk a little bit about my organization and my book. And I'm sure I'll see you in September.
Oh, yeah, we will. September 16th here in Richmond.
Yeah.
We will be here. We will be dancing in the streets here. I will be just a participant coming to and be part of this here at the McShin
Oh,
Foundation.
that's right. That's
I
right.
will.
That's right.
Yeah, I won't be working here anymore, so I'll just be sitting in the cheap seats. No. We'll have the bus tour of Mobilize Recovery stopping through here on September 16th. In the evening, I think it's 5 o'clock.
Yeah, in the evening. Mm-hmm.
Something. Yeah. Check it
5 or
out
6.
online, mobilizerecovery.org. But anyway, Leslie, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story and your journey with us. What I didn't tell you, and I didn't mean to not tell you, I just didn't think of it until just now, but our largest audience is actually people who are currently incarcerated. And we take this right here, and we give it to PayTel for free, who put it on tablets across the country. Most of them are in Virginia, but there are some that aren't here in Virginia. And individuals watch these little these hope shots. We hope they do anyway. And we get to see the numbers, and we get people who come in here and actually have and show us that they've watched it, because suddenly people ask about certain things, and it's like, and which is neat, because it's one of those things born out of the work that we did here. I mean, we were starting the podcast before the pandemic started, but when the pandemic started, we just we went harder, and we were doing more and more and more. And I think it's a testament to the resourcefulness of the recovery community, that you have been able to do all the work that you're doing online, with your virtual services, that we've been able to take our products, I hate that word, but take what we're doing here and provide it free, as a service, born completely out of, the need to continue to fill the gaps. And so we are the gap fillers. I think I'm going to stick with that. I love that. So anyway, Leslie, thank you.
And also 2023 is the year of the peer. I like that.
The year of the peer. That's right. In 2023. Leslie,
thank you so much for having me, Nathan. I really appreciate it.
This is a lot of fun. I'll probably see you next Tuesday at the next meeting. Art, as always, thank you for fabulous production back here, over there, doing your thing. And for everybody out there watching and or listening, thank you for being here today. We will see you tomorrow for Women Wednesday. I won't see you. I won't be on the show. But we will have Women Wednesday with Monique hosting.
Should be Monique.
Monique
or Jessie.
Yeah. Well, Jessie's
probably not Monique.
Okay, well, if it's Jessie, it'll be Jessie in a wig. Jesse's a very much a man. Anyway, well, I don't know. We're gonna have the interns on the show tomorrow, so we'll be interviewing the female interns. Somebody will be, and then on Thursday we've got Frank Cordovana on the show. He's going to talk about his 35 years in recovery, something like that, and his breath work that he does. So we're going to have a great week ahead of us. We will see you tomorrow, everybody. Thank you for being here, and stay in the herd.